Hello everyone and welcome to this Videos on Frontier video. My name is Jay Wakefield, and what do we have here? What we have here is a subcompact notebook running Microsoft's Windows XP. Brilliant, you might think. I mean, this is the Compaq Armada M300. Which, for those of you who've not seen the previous video, this is, it's got Ethernet, it's got a slew of parts on the back, like serial parallel VGA, and it has a modem, no optical drive, and there's a PC card slot. Wait, did I just say serial and parallel? Those parts aren't on... Wait a minute. Now, having those parts is fine. I mean, a lot of machines of the XP era did actually have those, including the subcompact ones. What seems to be... but I don't know. I need to check into this, actually. I need to have a look at this. Oh dear. Well, that just won't do at all. What we have here is an Intel Pentium 3 processor at 597 MHz. Well, it's actually 600, but Windows XP says it's clocking itself at 597, and there's 128 megs of RAM. That's not... That was fine for running XP back in the pre-Service Pack 2 days, but not necessarily now. Not in the post-Service Pack 3 era. I mean, Service Pack 2 itself could still kind of run fine on this kind of a setup, but, you know, once you start applying updates, this is Service Pack 3, so it's, you know, once you've got a decent web browser installed and some modern software, no, 128 megs of RAM. What you're looking at here is, basically, what I've done is I've actually set up this Compaq Armada in the sort of way that you might get a Pentium 3 laptop set up from eBay. Now, what this actually therefore means is, well, what generally tended to happen is, well, there's a couple of things really. It took Intel quite a while, you know, for the Pentium 4 mobile processors to come out. Well, it took Intel a while to bring out the mobile Pentium 4 processors. Now, there was a few machines that did actually use desktop-specified Pentium 4 processors, but doing that, you know, there was lots of problems with heat dissipation. You know, it's a laptop Pentium 4s, they tend to, you know, produce a heck of a lot of heat. And you had issues with, you also, you know, had issues with power usage. You know, a desktop processor is going to use a lot of power. You know, and you're always going to have to be not necessarily next to a plug socket, but near enough to get to one. And you know, that obviously made things, you know, quite difficult for laptop users, you know, who needed the machines to be portable. So what happened was Pentium 3 processors, they actually continued building Pentium 3 powered laptops right up until, I want to say, towards the end or back end of 2002. Mobile Pentium 4 machines, the earliest examples of mobile Pentium 4 machines that I have came out in early 2003. Well, were built in early 2003. And of course, XP came out in 2001. So you've got a lot of Pentium 3 machines running Windows XP that way. But also, a lot of people actually upgraded their pre-existing machines to XP, which again was absolutely fine. Windows XP back in the day, all it its minimum system requirements stated that it needed a Pentium. I'm not sure if it's a Pentium 2, 233 megahertz. I'm pretty sure it is. But I know people who've managed to, shoehorn it onto 166 megahertz machines, which I would not recommend under any circumstances. It needed 233 megahertz Intel Pentium 4 and 64 megs of RAM. And, well, I was told when I ran the XP compatibility checker that I needed at least 929 megabytes on the installation drive. So, if you look at it from a perspective, it required minimalist requirements. It required quite a tiny footprint. And, XP, a lot of people saw a lot of advantages. Some people obviously just wanted it because it was new. But other people, they liked the NT kernel that it was built on. Windows 9X was built on a different kernel. The NT kernel was, inherently more secure. Had better multitasking support. Wasn't as crash happy as the Windows 9X platform. So, like I said, a lot of people, eked life out of their older machines by installing Windows XP to them. And considering, what speed, what machines were coming out in 2000, 2001, the speeds of those machines, in a desktop, it would have seemed a lot older than what it actually was on a laptop because, then laptops were quite far behind desktops. Now, this kind of does leave you with a slight problem, really, because while XPRTM ran absolutely fine on these machines, and so did Service Pack 1, and if you really, really kind of pushed it, you could get Service Pack 2 to run as well. How's that? More modern software has kind of came out. And, it's kind of made these machines, running XP possibly a wee bit slow. And slow to the point of uselessness. You can't really... You can, in a way, use the modern internet on one of these machines, but things like YouTube and anything with Flash, it'll really make it extremely sluggish. And to be honest, I just wouldn't... I wouldn't even bother. Now, that leaves you, therefore, with an old laptop with Windows XP. Now, I don't know how I'm going to link to the next bit of the subject, but if you're in the market, a lot of people who are in the market for older laptops nowadays might want them to collect, to play games, or to run older software. And this presents another problem for Windows XP on this kind of a platform. While Windows XP has gone out of support as of April the 8th, it's still kind of, how do I put this? A bit too modern for some older programs to run. What we need here is an older version of Windows. And indeed, believe it or not, I mean, a lot of you a lot of you will know how you would probably go about getting an older version of Windows to run on here, but I was actually asked by someone on YouTube, how do you overwrite Windows XP with Windows 98 Second Edition? So, I am going to show you how to switch from XP to Windows 98 Second Edition using the Compaq Armada M300. However, before I do that, I guess I've got some splaining to do. You see, the Windows upgrade paths, it can seem a wee bit complicated. Okay, so let's think about this. There are two ways to install Windows, two main ways. I'm pretty sure there's probably a third way that I don't know about. But as far as I know, there's two main ways to, well, not necessarily just install Windows, but to actually switch from one version of Microsoft Windows to the other. Now, the first way is you can actually do a clean install. This is the most complicated way, but it does actually allow the most versatility, and is usually my preferred method of changing from one version of Windows to the other. Now, basically what that entails is wiping the hard drive. The hard drive is where everything is stored, so you literally wipe the hard drive clean. And in some cases, you may actually choose to repartition the hard drive. So if you can imagine a hard drive as a building and a partition as a room. Now, different versions of Windows use different file systems. And some file systems are more modern than others, so while you can actually convert to a superior file system, there's three main file systems that Microsoft was using at the time of XP. There was FAT16, which supported drives up to hard disk partitions up to 2.2 gigs in size with a total drive size of 8.4 gigs. That's what it said, although I've had FAT16 partitions on bigger hard drives. But yeah, it was actually really quite limited. There was FAT32, which came into play at Windows 95 OSR2, which actually supports hard disk partition sizes of up to a staggering 2 terabytes. I say staggering because I couldn't actually imagine. I mean, now, when I first read this, I was thinking, well, wow, a 2 terabyte hard disk, that is pure massive. Now we have 2 terabyte hard disks and even more, 3, 4, probably even a 5 terabyte one coming out. That wow, just I couldn't imagine anyone actually formatting a 2 terabyte hard disk with FAT32. And I mean, the thing about that FAT32 is the cluster size. The clusters seem to actually, well, let's say cluster. Yeah, the cluster sizes actually seem to size themselves with the size themselves in relation to the size of your hard disk. Now a cluster is basically, a way of storing files. Unfortunately, it's made up of so many kilobytes, so to speak. And while you can get 4 kilobyte size clusters on FAT16, while you can get 4 kilobyte size clusters on the next file system up, which is NTFS, FAT32, the cluster sizes seem to be a lot bigger than that. So what that means in real world terms, is that, the size of a file, let's say you have a 32K file, a big cluster will actually make it a lot bigger than that on disk. So could be 512 kilobytes. My knowledge of file systems is a wee bit rusty, I will admit. But NTFS is the next file system up. It has been around since Windows NT 3.1, but the version of NTFS has obviously upgraded with the different versions of Windows NT, and I think it was NTFS 5 that's in use by Windows 2000 and XP. And what that means is, NTFS can support file sizes of up to 2 terabytes. Not hard disks, sizes. You can, and it is inherently more secure. So it actually supports file permissions, it actually supports data compression. So it's pretty advanced, actually, as file systems go. Now, what that means is that older versions of Windows will not necessarily be able to even see partitions formatted in newer file systems. So, for example, MS-DOS, early versions of MS-DOS up to 7.0, and Windows 95, and Windows versions up to Windows 95A cannot see FAT32 partitions. They can't use them. They don't support them. Well, I say Windows versions. I know that if you hack DOS 7.1, and you can get Windows 3.1 to run on there, on a FAT32 partition, but usually you have problems with 3.1 and FAT32 partitions. Windows 95B OSR2 up to Windows ME can use FAT16 and FAT32 partitions, but they cannot read NTFS partitions. Windows NT can read NTFS. Windows NT versions up to 4.0 can use NTFS and FAT16 partitions. However, Windows 2000 and onwards can actually see and use FAT16, FAT32, and NTFS partitions. And of course, now you've got the newer versions of Windows that have introduced the exFAT file system, which just doesn't really seem to be compatible with anything much. So, given that information, if you're switching between Windows versions and you're doing a clean format, it enables you to actually be able to, sometimes you may like to adjust what file system you use. And to be honest, there is another thing, actually, that I must say that I nearly forgot. You can actually upgrade from FAT16 to FAT32, and you can upgrade from FAT32 to NTFS. However, you can't necessarily do it the other way. Well, you can do it the other way around. So, if you're running if you're wanting to install an older version of Windows, you need to make sure it uses a partition that it supports. But like I said, clean installing Windows is the more complicated route. You have to actually wipe the hard disk, and so there's nothing on it. And then what you do from there is you actually go ahead and reinstall Windows, and you have to reinstall all the device drivers that make it work, and you have to reinstall all of your old software applications as well, and restore your backed up data. And anything that you've not backed up, well, once you've wiped the hard drive, it's gone. That is the most versatile way of doing things, and in my and in my experience, tends to yield the best results for performance. Because you're starting off on a clean slate, you've not got bits of old files and what have you, and hanging around, and stuff that might not be fully compatible with the next version, the version of Windows you install over the top of the previous version. It's hanging around. It is just neater, in my opinion. Now, the next way to switch from one version of Windows to the other, I think you've guessed it, is to upgrade, to actually perform an in-place upgrade. And Microsoft actually first introduced that, really, with MS-DOS 5, and I think Windows has always been able to, retain some sort of files and settings. I know that going from Windows 2.0 to Windows 3.0, if you change the color scheme and what have you, it will actually retain that. Once you go from 2.0 to 3.0, and any programs you've got installed in Windows 2.03, it will actually carry those over as well. Obviously, because there wasn't such a thing as a program group in Windows 2.03, everything will just be bunged into the applications group. But an in-place upgrade of Windows is very simple. Yes, you probably may have to find some device drivers, some newer ones. But if you're upgrading, between Windows 95, 98 and ME, or if you're upgrading, from within the same Windows product line, 9X or NT, usually the previous sets of drivers will work. So it's literally just a case of install Windows and, that's it. It's all very well and good when it actually works, but sometimes you can actually hit snags. Sometimes, there'll be a file or something, or a driver that will actually stop the Windows install halfway, and it'll break your Windows install, and then you'll have to do a clean install anyway. Or you just might end up with a system that's kind of so bogged down with bits of old, installed software that it actually becomes a lot slower. So, while it can be easier, sometimes in my experiences it has yielded poorer results. Now, you can upgrade from an earlier version of Windows. I think most people may have guessed this. You can actually upgrade from an earlier version of Windows to a newer version of Windows. Obviously, the newer version of Windows will have system requirements. Newer version of Windows will actually tell you, look, you can upgrade from this version of Windows, but not this one. So, for example, Windows XP, you can upgrade to it from Windows 98, 2000, or Millennium, but not Windows 95. Windows Vista, you can upgrade to it from, Windows 7. Let's take Windows 7. You can upgrade to it from Vista, but you can't actually upgrade to it from XP. From Windows 2000 onwards, you've also been able to switch Windows switch from a version of Windows 9X to a version of Windows NT. You've not been able to do that. While you've been able to upgrade from an older version of NT to a newer one, pretty much from when from when NT was created, you've never been able to actually upgrade a Windows 9X system or 3.x system to a Windows NT based system. You've just not been able to do it. It will have installed itself as a separate Windows installation. But from 2000 onwards, you can actually upgrade Windows 95, Windows 98, and believe it or not, you can actually upgrade from Millennium to 2000, even though, chronologically speaking, Millennium is actually newer. But because Windows ME is based on the Windows 9X product code, and I think as well, because it has a version number of 4.9 and Windows 2000's version number is 5.0, I think that might actually trick the installer into saying, yeah, this is an older version, you can upgrade. But you can't, apart from that wee anomaly there that I've just mentioned, you can't go back the way. You can't actually go back from Windows 2000 to 95 without actually clearing off Windows 2000 first, for example. You can't also, I mean, the only way to go back to an older version of Windows is if you'd actually upgraded first. So if I'd upgraded to from Windows 95 to 98, yes, I could actually uninstall Windows 98 and go back to 95. But you can't actually, and that's a whole other hornet's nest of a story. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do a video on that. Because if you think upgrading leaves your computer in a mess, then try uninstalling a new operating system, a newer version of an operating system. Oh my goodness, no. Yeah. Okay, just don't. Right, what was I talking about? Yes, you can't actually overwrite a newer version of Windows with an older one. It just won't work. And while I'm on the subject of uninstalling a Windows upgrade, you can uninstall Windows XP, and I believe you can roll back to an earlier version of Windows 9X. However, you must make sure that the drive hasn't been converted to NTFS, because Windows 9X can't read NTFS partitions, and you can't convert from NTFS back to FAT32. I don't believe you can uninstall Windows 2000, but you can uninstall Windows 95, you can uninstall Windows 98, and you can uninstall Windows Millennium Edition. As long as they've actually been pre-upgraded from a previous version of Windows. If you've clean installed it, then obviously you can't go back. Now this is a fresh install of XP, so if we look in Add Remove Programs, I've actually set this machine up to be like my 2001 custom built was. And the only thing, when I had XP on it, that is, and the only thing that's on here is Office 2000 Professional. So, you know, as you can see, I've not upgraded from an older version of Windows that I could possibly go back to. The drive, just to make things interesting, the drive is formatted as NTFS. So what we're wanting to do, like I said before, is this computer is going to be switched from XP to 98. It's actually going to be downgraded. I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, before I do, I'd just like to kind of tack on another wee note. That it has been the behaviour of... it has been the tradition of some eBay sellers that when selling an older laptop, they will actually try and put the newest version of Windows. They will actually shoehorn a really modern version of Windows. You know, so that if someone wanted, they could at least attempt to use it as a modern laptop. I got my high-grade Notino. I got that with XP on it. And, you know, so obviously I wanted Windows 98, so I had to switch it back. My original Dell Latitude CPX, back in the Blue Planet 64 days, that came with XP pre-installed, I believe. Or at least I put a hard disk drive in there that did have XP installed on it. So, yeah. Oftentimes sellers will shoehorn a legitimate... Well, they'll shoehorn a copy of XP onto the system, be it legitimately or illegitimately. If you're using an illegal copy of XP, then that is against the eBay rules and regs. And oftentimes you'll also find that the XP copy has not been activated. neither, just like this one. In fact, I installed it. The CMOS battery is dead on this machine, so I installed XP, set the date and time, so now it's actually past its period of grace. So when I reboot this computer, it's not going to work. Well, XP will just not boot. It'll tell me that I've got to activate before it'll boot. So, I'm actually going to have to install some operating system anyway if I ever want to use this machine. So, first things first. You've got a machine, it's running Windows XP, and it seems to have the drivers. Older machines, Windows XP will generally have drivers for. However, an older version of Windows is not necessarily going to have drivers. Now, there's a couple of ways to obtain drivers. HP keeps drivers for theirs and Compaq's systems. Sony will sort you out drivers for their systems. Dell will sort you out drivers for their systems. And Acer traditionally has been able to sort you out drivers for its systems, but it seems that they are wanting to actually close down the legacy driver archives, which is not the best thing to do. But I understand why they're doing it, because why support a server that by rights people shouldn't actually be needing anymore. But like I said, there are a handful of companies that do keep their drivers. Oh yeah, Toshiba is another one. They actually keep their drivers. I'm sorry, this is not an exhaustive list. So if you want to add, ones that I've missed off, for the benefit of other YouTube users watching this video, fine. But please don't come to me saying, "Oh, you've forgotten this, or you're dumb, or something." Or, I don't know. It's not an exhaustive list. I could be here for days. But if you can't find the drivers for your systems, for example, if you own a Packard Bell, you can't get drivers for their older systems for love nor money. Something like a Packard Bell. What you would do is you would actually have to go in and have a look manually for each driver. Generally speaking, the ones that you'll need are, okay, it would be nice to get chipset drivers, and some machines did actually have third-party chipset drivers for them for older versions of Windows, but you don't necessarily need them. For older laptops, what you're looking for is a driver for the display, a sound card driver if it has a sound card, and a driver for any communications cards. When I say communications, I mean in-belt Ethernet and in-belt modem, not necessarily a driver for the COM ports. Things like infrared will usually have drivers. Microsoft Windows will actually support infrared. PC card slots, again, Windows 95 onwards will actually support those out of the box, although there are a few anomalies. So, if you are struggling, I would, I'd just note them down to be on the safe side. Now, there's a couple of ways you can actually find out how to get drivers, and if we're on XP, which we are, I'm going to show you this way. You can actually use a Debian-based Linux, something like Damn Small Linux, an Ubuntu Live CD, Lubuntu, anything like that. If you go into the terminal and use the lspci command, it will actually probe everything in your computer. And for most things, it usually is able to identify the make and model of the device. For some things, it's just not able to do that. I've got a Ralink USB wireless card, and it just can't. It just doesn't Linux probed it and was able to identify it was a wireless card, but it couldn't identify which one. It just said, AB 802.11n wireless adapter, Wi-Fi adapter, which is, yeah, I know it's that, but what kind is it? So, to be able to tell which devices are installed on your computer in XP, what you do is you click on Start, you right-click on the My Computer icon, and then you go to Properties. Now, in the Properties, you go to the Hardware tab, and then in Device Manager, you click on Device Manager, there we go, and, okay, Now, if there's a device that XP can't detect automatically, because XP's driver list is certainly not exhaustive, even for some older machines it might have trouble. If there's a device that you're having trouble with getting it to work, something like a proprietary device, like, say if your machine has an early webcam, like some of the Sony Petrobooks do, you would probably, just Google the make and model of your laptop, which in this case is Armada M300, and, and then just type something like drivers, Windows, whatever version of Windows you're wanting them for. Someone in a forum might actually be able to, get you a copy of the driver or link you to it. Driver Guide is a good resource, but you do have to use a Driver Guide installer. The best way to do that is just to, decline every offer you get, and then click the skip button when available, and it will download your driver to the folder that the installer is, the Driver Guide downloader is located in. Driver Guide is probably one of the best driver resources on the internet that you are going to find. So, drivers in. Windows XP has detected everything in this computer. Perfect. So, what we're going to need drivers for is the display adapter. So, we don't need to have a look at computer or battery, because Windows 98 can actually take care of that for us. So if we click on the plus next to display adapter, we see that this is an ATI 3D Rage LT Pro. Now, you can either use your mobile phone to take a picture of this, just open up all the tabs, just open up all the pluses, and maximize it, or do whatever. You can screenshot it and save it to a USB flash drive just by hitting print screen. The print screen key might be a secondary function that you might have to hit with the FN key. So, for example, for me to use the print screen function, I actually have to hit FN and insert. And I realise I can't actually do it because my hand can't actually span the full width of the keyboard. FN is in the bottom left corner. Insert and print screen are at the top. It's the second to last key on the top right. So I would have to do it with two hands. Printed screening is a way of being able to, take note of what drivers you have. Or you could do it the old-fashioned way with a pen and paper. So like I said, we want to look for the display adapter, ATI 3D Rage LT Pro. Floppy disk connectors, no, we don't need that. We want to find out what modem it is, and it's a Lucent Win modem. Bit vague, but it works. PCMCIA ports, we'll have a look at that, and it's a Texas Instruments PCI 1211 card bus controller. Windows 95 can usually support Texas Instruments PC card slots out of the box. 95 onwards, and then audio drivers. The one that you actually just need to look for, every machine will have audio codecs, legacy audio drivers, legacy video capture drivers, media control devices. Some will have MPU-401 compatible MIDI device, and some will have standard game part, and others will, and then everyone should have video codecs. No, the driver you actually need to look for is the one that's not named any of these things. So in this case, it's ESS Maestro 2E PCI Audio Drive WDM. So basically just, kind of look out for one that actually has a proper make and model. Rather than just, because Windows, it can sort all the rest of this out itself. So just look out for the one with the make and model. So in this case, like I said, it's an ESS Maestro 2E PCI audio drive. Storage devices, it's just a generic volume. That is my USB flash drive. And then Universal Serial Bus Controller. Windows 95B onwards should be able to sort those out. Now, Because this is a Compaq, I can actually get the drivers from HP's website. And to do that, it's actually really surprisingly simple. So if you just bear with me while I open a page. So what I do is browse to HP's website. And for those of you wondering why I'm going to Hewlett-Packard's website for drivers for a Compaq, well, back in the early 2000s, Compaq was sold to Hewlett-Packard. And quite frankly, it all went to HP in a handbasket, as UXW Bell would say. Now, to get to the drivers, what we need to do, I'm using the magnifier here, is we need to go to support and then download drivers. And then we can find by product. So you don't necessarily need to type Compaq in here, just type Armada M300. And then it will say, one match found, please select below. Now, some machines it can get finicky. For example, if you try searching for a 1590, or let's say you try searching for a Compaq 4131T for drivers for that machine, you can get them, but you have to actually type in here Compaq Armada. You actually have to type Armada 4100, and then it will, say 4100 series, and then it'll ask you which series, which sub-series. So is it a 4120, 4130, that sort of thing. And, if it'll only offer up to a certain point, like, I can't remember how it worked with the 4131T, but if it said, if you only had to, let's say it only offered drivers for the 4130, chances are the 4131T would have the same makeup as the 4130. But that's just as an example. I genuinely can't remember what I said, if Compaq actually had specific drivers for the 4131, or if it was just used 4130 drivers. Anyway, so it's actually found the Armada M300, Compaq Armada Notebook PC M300. It is a notebook. It's not a desktop. So now we're going to the support center. You want to select which operating system you're using. I'm wanting to install Windows 98. I don't know why it's been slow today. And then you just go through and download all the drivers. Some of these you might not necessarily need to worry about, like the set video utility. But just to be on the safe side, download and install all of them. So let's say I'm wanting to download the sound card driver. I click download. It'll ask me, do I want to save it? I'll click yes. And then just put it into whatever. I mean, I have the M300 drivers here, but I'm just going to show you. Now, it's my belief that some of these machines, if you have WinRAR installed on your main machine, it's my belief that actually you can right-click and extract the archive. I would do that. And once you've got all the drivers downloaded, actually, try and call them reasonably good names. Because some of mine I have, some of mine I haven't. And the ones that I actually have just kind of left them as this kind of file name, it's really agonizing to try and pin down which driver I need to install. For example, I had to install an Ethernet driver to one of my M700s. I didn't know where the Ethernet driver was, and it took me going through all the folders and in some cases firing up the installer to actually find out that I didn't have the Ethernet driver downloaded for whatever reason, and I had to go to Compaq's website. So when it asks you what you want to save the file as, if it does, then name it. Give it a name. So if you're downloading the audio driver, actually call it audio driver. If you if your browser downloads stuff automatically, then, well, have the folder, what you do is once you've downloaded the file, have the right click on the downloads button, right click and select open containing folder, and then just rename, select the file, and then press the F2 key to rename it. And then go on and download the next one. And these are instructions for, if you're using Mozilla Firefox, which I'm using the latest version with the new redesigned menu. Yay, Firefox! So, yes, that's that sorted. Also, if you're installing Windows 98, download the USB mass storage device driver. You can Google it. So, Windows 98 USB mass storage device driver. Because Windows 98 won't support flash disks natively. It's usually technical-assistance.co.uk/kb/USB msd98.php. Oh, and this page seems to be having some issues. Installing the drivers, and then you download, if you're installing for Windows 98 First Edition 4.10.1998 or Windows 98 Second Edition 4.10.2222. Now, once you have these drivers, like I said, unless you have the USB mass storage device driver on a CD, if you're burning that to a CD, you may as well burn these drivers while you're at it. It makes no sense just having an entire CD just for one small file. Or if, like me, you have the USB mass storage device driver on another CD, then, just copy all these files over to a USB flash disk. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to install, about an hour or so in. So, for this machine at least, I actually have to attach the slice. That'll be useful. Attaching the slice with one hand on the computer. Making sure the compact doesn't drop off the edge of the table, because that would be awful bad and the machine would be unable to load up. Sorry, I'm just being a derp. So I'm just going to drop this into the slice. Those of you who saw the original video will remember how this went. It worries. Oh, hang on a minute. Now you've got to press it like you mean it, and then the computer emits 3 loud beeps, and then your floppy and CD drives are mounted. Obviously, you only have to make sure it's in a slice if your computer doesn't have external drives on its chassis. So, now we're actually going to go and find a Windows 98 disk. Found one! And just to kind of show you what happens if I was to try and set up Windows 98 from within Windows XP. Please excuse that loud rocket. I try launching the setup file. And then it comes up with this dialog. You cannot install Windows 98 while running this version of Windows. Start your computer in MS-DOS mode. How? And then install Windows 98. See the Windows 98 installation guide for further instructions. Now that's assuming I actually have a DOS install. A FAT32, no, FAT16 or 32 partition with a DOS install. That's a lot of assumptions. So, to be able to boot into the Windows 98 CD, I actually need to restart the computer. Make sure your computer is set to boot from the CD-ROM drive at this point. Now, a lot of you might be thinking that I'm going to whip out the Acronis OS selector disk to, do a quick job of repartitioning and formatting the hard drive. Actually, I'm not, because you've all seen me do that before. In fact, you've all seen me install Windows 98 before, but we're actually going to do this the hard way. We're actually going to use fdisk, which is not only text-based and more difficult to use, it also means that because we're going to use format, and because it's a newly created partition, we're not going to be able to format it quickly, so we're going to have to actually wait for it to format. But obviously I will jump cut to that. Okay, so the Windows 98 CD will boot, and if it boots from the CD, you'll get the Microsoft Windows 98 CD-ROM startup menu. It will give me the option to boot from the hard drive. If I was to select that, the computer would boot right back into Windows XP, or to boot from the CD-ROM. Enter your choice. Well, you can use the down arrows to select it, or I'm guessing you can press a number. We're going to boot with CD-ROM support. Sorry, I ran out of memory. So, what this basically does is to sort of pseudo-emulate a Windows 98 boot floppy, but it doesn't really do a good job of it, because the format.com command is missing from the quote-unquote floppy. You actually have to find it in d:/Windows 98, where D is the letter of your CD-ROM drive. MSCDEX will tell you what letter your CD-ROM drive is, which is really nice and helpful. So, I'm going to type fdisk in. Your computer has a disk larger than 512 megabytes. This version of Windows includes improved support for large disks, resulting in more efficient use of disk space on larger drives, allowing disks over 2 gigabytes to be formatted as a single drive. So basically it's asking me, do I wish to enable large disk support? Let me translate that for you. Do you wish to enable FAT32 support? Yes, I do. Your computer has NTFS partitions which may require large drive support. If you're using another operating system such as Windows NT, which supports large drives, you should, enable treating these partitions as large. Note, if you answer Y and the partition display looks incorrect, or a hang or crash occurs, do nothing, run fdisk again, and answer no to the question. Should NTFS partitions on all drives be treated as large? I'm going to vote yes. Oh no, Jay's trying to subliminal politic really good. First, we're going to display the partition information. As you can see, there is one partition which is active. Type NTFS volume label none, megabytes 9590 system, and it's just usage 100%. Now, fdisk can see NTFS partitions exist, but it can't actually use them. It can't read them, it can't write them. There are programs that will let you read NTFS partitions under DOS, but you can't really use them. We're just going to delete this, so we need to press escape to go back to the menu. I love it. Press escape to continue. Now we want to delete partition or logical DOS drive, so we select 3 and enter. Current fixed disk drive 1, choose any one of the following: delete primary DOS partition, delete extended DOS partition, delete logical DOS drives in the extended DOS partition, delete non-DOS partitions. NTFS partitions are classed as non-DOS, so we want to select 4. Now it's telling me, warning, data will be deleted. Data in the deleted non-DOS partition will be lost. What non-DOS partition do you want to delete? There's only one partition there, so I'll just select the number 1. If there was more than one partition, I would actually have to type the number. It would be like, 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So I just want to delete partition 1, that's the default value, so I'll just press enter. Do you wish to continue? Y/N, yes. And yes, I know the computer's just reminded us, but this will mean that the partition has now been deleted. And it even says non-DOS partition deleted. Now I want to press escape to continue. Now we should have an empty drive. So I want to create a DOS partition or logical DOS drive. Because I enabled large disk support, the partition that's created will be FAT32. So because create DOS partition or logical DOS drive is the top option, which is automatically selected, choose option number 1, I am going to, although you can press 1 just to be sure, I'm going to press enter. We want to create a primary DOS partition. For now, I'm actually just going to use the entire drive as a partition. I mean, it's 10 gigs, so I really don't want to be complicating things by partitioning it up. On my main machine I do have separate partitions for my data and my operating system and applications. My operating system and applications sit on one partition, my data sits across a few. Okay, current fixed drive. Do you wish to use the maximum available size for a primary DOS partition and make the partition active? Yes, I do. Now it's verifying the drive integrity. Why don't they have this check when politicians are actually sworn in? Integrity check. Excellent. Now it's telling me that I must restart my system for my changes to take effect. Any drives I have created or changed must be formatted after I restart. Shut down Windows? No. Windows isn't even open. I tried running fdisk onto Windows. There would be trouble. There would be lots and lots of trouble. Shut down Windows before restarting. Press escape to exit fdisk. Older versions of fdisk used to restart the machine automatically. I like that. So now I want to restart the machine and actually format its hard drive. However, I'm starting to feel a wee bit hungry and I've not necessarily been feeling too great. Well, it is now 10 to 12, so in a few minutes it's going to be May the 1st. And now I'm about ready to kind of go back to doing some compacking. So, what we're going to do now is we fdisked. We have created a new partition on the hard disk. So once again, we're going to start the computer with CD-ROM support. Now we're going to format the hard disk, and I mean this should. This is actually quite simple to do. Now, do you remember me saying earlier that this kind of pseudo emulates a Windows 98 boot disk? Doesn't emulate at all. On a true Windows 98 boot floppy, I can type format at the A command, at the A prompt, and it would actually go on to format it. But here, it says bad commander file name. Now we booted with CD-ROM support. The Windows 98 CD is in the drive. Do you want to know where the format.com command is? Okay. Oh dear. S drive. I had one job, as Elmal3 would say. D drive, and I'm going to change directory to the Win98 folder. Now, I want to actually format drive C and make it bootable. So, format, I'm going to tell it to format the C drive, so I can actually use the file system. So if you can imagine, so if we go back to our house analogy, I would say that a hard disk would be like a building, a partition would be like a room. Okay, it might just be the one big room that fills the entire building. And the file system is basically the way of storing your stuff. So it could be like, you place your things in a shelf in a certain way, or you place it all in boxes, or you just, have loads of tables and then just haphazardly throw all the stuff on the tables. So kind of a file system is literally that, a file system, a system for files, a system of files, system for storing files, system for managing files. So we've made the partition, but you do actually need to format it. Just make so in that, in a case, make those shelves available. So, we've made the partition, we've told it it's going to be FAT32, so that's kind of like, saying, right, well, we've got this room and we've got all the furniture, but we bought it from IKEA, so it's flat packed. So formatting's kind of just the way of setting everything up, if you know what about, if you'll go with me on the analogy. I know I'm probably way off the mark, but I mean that is kind of how I see it, file systems. So format C:, that would just format the C drive, but what we want to do is we want to copy the system files, make the disk bootable. It will actually boot it to a Windows 98 command prompt, or if you want to be more specific, it will install. It will actually make the drive bootable into MS-DOS 7.1. To do that, what we need to do is format C:/S, and that will actually copy the system files that's currently used to boot this DOS environment over to the disk you're formatting, as in the hard disk. So we'll press enter. Warning! All data on non-removable disk drive C will be lost. Proceed with format. Well, I think so. Gonna vote yes. So, there you have it. So this will take a while to actually format the disk. So I'm just going to leave it to do its thing. Okay, so the hard disk is formatted now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do my usual, copy the Windows 98 files over to an OEM folder. Windows. So we're actually doing MD Windows / options.
I said slash.
Yeah. And it's Billy Carr and Luke Miller.
Hey internet, how you doing?
Hello. This is a video that I was doing the other night, but I accidentally deleted the file, so I'm doing it now, and it's terrible. I get about an hour in before I actually do anything, because there's just that much to explain. I realise there's that much to explain, and Windows upgrade patterns and what have you. So MD, if just in case you're wondering, stands for Make Directory. Oh, and just be aware, international users, that the keyboard layout on the CD-ROM will actually be American when you boot. Alright, so I've got the folder, so I'm going to CD Windows /options /cabs. And now we're actually going to copy the contents of the Windows 98 CD. So to do that, copy d:\win98 /**. And what *** means is I want to copy the file matching any file name and any file type. Basically what that means is that everything that isn't a folder will be copied. You actually have to use Xcopy to copy folders, or make the folders manually and then copy the contents of the folders manually. It's very messy. And there's no Xcopy! There is no Xcopy on a Windows on this Windows 98 boot CD. Yeah, an Xcopy is just the best. They really did strip DOS down, and you know, sad to say, some of its useful parts appear to be missing. So there you have it. So I will jump cut with you. I will jump cut the now, and then I'll come back when it's time to start the installation. And now it is 20 to 1 a.m. on May the 2nd, and which means this video has elapsed. This video has gone across 3 dates: April the 30th, May the 1st, May the 2nd. So, as you remember, I actually made the hard disk bootable using the format C: command with the /S switch, and I copied over the Windows 98 startup files. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go and install Windows 98. Now, if you remember, we started in C: /Windows /Options /cabs. Now, if you use a UK keyboard like I do, then because a basic DOS install is mapped to the US keyboard layout, and you can't do anything about that without the KEYB command. We're actually the backslash key is not this. If I press this, it's redundant. See, the American keyboard only has 102 keys. No, 101 keys. The UK keyboard has 104, or however many this laptop has. Basically what it was is you had 83, 84 keys, 101, 102 keys, and 104, 105 keys. The UK keyboard has an extra key that the US keyboard doesn't have. Now, if you're wondering how to get a backslash, it's the hash key. But, see, if I press that, I get a backslash on screen. However, this will all change once we go into Windows Setup. I'll show you. CD Windows /Options /cabs. So what's happening now is the computer's doing a scan disk. If you remember, Windows 95, unless you have the HiMem.sys driver loaded, ScanDisk will not run, but it'll run fine in Windows 98. Now we're in Windows 98 setup, and yes, for those of you who are very observant, this part of Windows 98 setup does have a Windows 3.1 style user interface, and that is something I always found quite fascinating. Sorry about the shaky camera, I'm putting a charger in. Right, let's just make sure I've got it, put it the right way. Sorry about this. Excellent. So, what we're going to do now is just click continue. Excellent. So, now it's going to ask us if we want to install some C:\Windows.000. Not likely. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to select other directory. The reason it's saying, do I want to install in Windows.000 is because, well, this is a non-upgrade copy of Windows 98, and it assumes that because a Windows directory exists, that there must be Windows installed, and therefore I should want to install a new copy. Now, you can use a non-upgrade copy of Windows to perform an upgrade. I believe I've done it before. In fact, I did. I showed you how to do that in the how to upgrade from Windows 95 RTM to BRC video. Now, I've selected other directory here. Notice how it's called a directory.
not a folder. Folders used to be known as directories in MS-DOS and versions of Windows before Windows 95 and NT 4.0, and then they became known as folders. So what we're just going to do here is we're going to delete the .000. Type the name of the directory where you want to set up Windows 98. Notice it's recommended that only advanced users and system administrators change this option. Oh, okay. So when I click next, it will now tell me that the directory c:\Windows already exists. If I continue, the files in this directory may be overwritten. Do you want to continue with the specified directory? Yes, I do. And to be honest, if you've only got the install files in there, you should be okay. And the reason I like to install Windows 98 this way, I know it takes up space on the hard disk, but there's a lot of things, like driver installs that require you to have a copy of the Windows 98 CD handy. Sometimes it's just more convenient to not have to go digging for your Windows 98 CD. So what I'm going to do now is a custom install. I get to install whatever programs I choose. So desktop themes, I'll have that. Actually, I don't want online services, do I? Computer name. Armada M300. Workgroup, computer description. I could type it in here if I wanted to. J's Compaq Armada M300. I remember with the 2001 custom build, I often used to write the PC in Jay's bedroom. And right, so here is where we change the system locale and keyboard layout. Good news, if you live in America, you can just hit next and be done with it. If, like me, you live in Scotland, you actually have to tell the machine that you live in some entity which we may not be a part of come 2016, depending on how we vote on September the 18th, 2014. However, what we're going to do is we're going to change the keyboard layout to British United Kingdom. So just what we do, we select the keyboard layout here from the items list. It's highlighted in blue, which means it's selected. Change, and I'm just going to type in B. I'm going to keep doing that until British is selected. And then just click, oh, okay. Now, regional settings, we also want to change those as well, because it's not like I'm using a British keyboard layouted machine in the US. Some of my systems do have US keyboard layouts, so I actually do have to set them so that the system locale is set to British, but the keyboard layout stays set as US. But in this case, both need to be changed over, because this is a British keyboard. Click the item used by your computer and then click OK, English British. Click the item used by your computer and then click OK. Sounds like it was a dialog box that was just written up. It didn't actually explain what item it was. And yeah, it's a bit of a generic statement really. And now we can click next. Establishing your location. Windows 98 makes it easy to get region-specific news and information. Selecting the correct location establishes the basic settings for receiving this information. Select your country and region from the list below. Now this actually looks a lot like one of the screens on Internet Explorer 4 setup, and probably that's because that's where it's been taken. In the original version of Windows 98, you had web channels, a wee channel bar that went down the right of the screen. You probably saw them on the Toshiba Tecra 800. And selecting this location would give you channels based on whereabouts in the world you were. I mean, the American channels are completely different from ours. So, you know, if I appear to have a different channel bar in Windows 95 with active desktop / Windows 98 videos, it's because, well, my channels are completely different because I live in the UK. FYI, most, if not all, of the web channels don't really work anymore. Right. But I can still select the United Kingdom as a location. Pretty sure there's some other settings it changes. Next, it will ask me if I want to create a startup disk. That'd be a regular Windows 98 boot disk. If I wanted to, I could put in a blank floppy disk now, and it would write it. It would make it into a Windows 98 boot disk. But I don't want a Windows 98 boot disk just now, so I'm just going to click cancel here. And now it's telling me to start copying files. The Windows 98 wizard now has enough information to start copying Windows 98 files to your computer. If you want to review or change any of the settings, click back. To start copying Windows 98 files, click next. Well, this is going to take a while. So, I'm just going to watch something interesting on YouTube. I have a can of Iron Brew here, so I don't need to go make a cup of tea. And, yeah. Listen at that hard disk. Sounds like it's not long left of this world. I would like to get another 20 in here. That's what I had before. But I'll jump cut, and thanks to the magic of video editing, I'll be right back. Sorry, UXW Bell. Stole your turn of phrase. Don't you just love Windows updates? I've went back to Windows 7 on my main computer, because 8 was acting a bit too quirky for me. And oftentimes it was just quite slow and a wee bit unmanageable. Can't help thinking it's Windows Vista 2. Anyway, back to the laptop. So now we're on the second part of setup. Windows 98 First Edition actually does the registration and product key information at the start of setup, before anything happens. I don't know why Windows 98 Second Edition does it after, well, the files of the Windows 98 files have basically been copied. I just don't understand. Because, I mean, if you read the license agreement at this point and then chose not to abide by it, you'd actually have to go back and reinstall your previous operating system. Instead of Windows 98 First Edition, where you could read the license agreement, decide that you don't want to abide by it, cancel setup, no harm done, and then return, you know, your copy of Windows back to the store for a full refund, or so it's, or so the story goes. But nevertheless, yeah, it's time to actually, copy, well, I actually have the key for this system, but it's underneath the actual computer, which is not good. So, what I need to do is I actually need to release the machine from the docking station and then get the key. Hang on a minute. There we go. Let's try it. There we go. And then I'll have a copy of the key and I'll put it back in. Now, if this system had have had a working battery, I wouldn't have had to switch it off. But did you notice how, when I actually clicked cancel here, setup actually shut the computer down? Okay, so Windows 98 is going to configure hardware and what have you, and then it'll restart and then configure some more hardware before asking you things like time zone and time and date and what have you. However, if you're working on a machine that has PC card slots, you'll get this wee message. Welcome to the PC card PCMCIA wizard. What this will do is it will actually ask you if you have any rail mode DOS drivers for PC cards that you want disabled for running Windows, and well, first it'll ask you if you're actually using a PC card device to install Windows, and then it will actually ask you if you have any rail mode PC card drivers that you want disabled. Now, because we formatted the hard drive and this is a fresh install of Windows and that the Windows files are on the hard drive, no, we are not using a PC network card CD-ROM connected to a SCSI card, etc., etc. to install Windows, and we do not want to review our system files and select real mode PC card drivers so Windows can disable them, due to the fact that we don't actually have any real mode PC card drivers that are installed. And then it says, you have now finished a PC card wizard. To enable 32-bit support, click Finish, and then restart your computer for the changes to take effect. Well, it's Windows 98 setup. It will restart itself automatically. If you're... For those of you wondering, but gee, what is a real mode CD driver? Ah, that's probably it. No, wait, you'd have the Windows 98 CD and the drive during setup now, wouldn't you? And unlike Windows 95, Windows 98 actually does support CD-ROM access after the first restart of the computer during setup, unlike Windows 95. Like I said, a real mode driver of any sort, it's one that actually runs as a terminate and stay resident program under MS-DOS. But Jay, why is a terminate and stay resident program under MS-DOS? Well, what it is a program that you can actually run in autoexec.bat, which is basically the DOS equivalent of the Windows startup folder. What that is, a batch file is basically a list of commands, similar to a shell script in Linux. It's kind of like making a macro, so it's like, you want a certain set of commands to run, so instead, and you need to do it regularly, so instead of typing them out one by one, a batch file will actually fire them off in quick succession, bang, 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 bang. However, you have some programs, like actual application software, something like your word processor, or something like, any kind of program, even Windows. Now, that will terminate, but when it does, it's no longer open. So you can't actually, if a program doesn't terminate, the rest of the batch file can't actually fire. A terminate and stay resident program is one that will actually terminate in terms of it'll close and allow the batch file, for example, autoexec.bat, to continue, but it will remain loaded up in memory. So you can actually access it and use other programs at the same time. Things like Sidekick, that's a terminate and stay resident program. Fax modem drivers, PC card drivers, these are all kind of terminate and stay resident programs, and they all run in so-called real mode, as in accessing the computer's hardware directly, which is what MS-DOS does, in real time. Not real time, but just in real terms. Whereas Windows runs in so-called protected mode, where access to the hardware is actually done by the operating system, and programs can't actually do that themselves, necessarily. The programs actually talk to the operating system and drivers, and have them manipulate the hardware, whereas DOS mode, you actually communicate with whereas DOS programs communicate with the hardware itself. Sorry, that's a bit of a rambling explanation, but I think I got it down. Sorry if I did it wrong. Okay, so I'll set the date and time, but it'll be useless as this computer has no CMOS battery that works, and that is actually on the list of things to do. I also want to get these smaller machines like the Evos. I think the Evo N610C actually does work battery wise, but my Evo N400 and N600 don't. The batteries are broken, but for super, subcompact laptops like these, I would like working batteries. Now, what time is it? It is 1. Oh, it's not the 4th of May. What am I doing? It's the 2nd of May. Oops. I'm in the future. There we go. No, wait. Yeah, that's it. And now I want to set my time zone to Greenwich Mean Time. Excellent. And now what will happen now is Windows will sort out the start menu entries. And then it will configure system settings. And it'll do that for about, well, it says 9 minutes, but usually quite a bit quicker. See, the minute counter is going down already. These counters don't actually, I don't think they calculate actually how long it's going to take on your computer. I just believe that in a particular point in setup, there's a line of code that actually triggers that number to go down. And I believe the time estimates were made based on probably the lowest common denominator, i.e. I'm thinking the minimum requirement for Windows 98 would be a 486 DX266 with 16 megs of RAM. And it's probably working on, you know, it'll probably take that long to install Windows 98 on that machine. So you've not got people complaining, oh, it said it was going to take 20 minutes and it actually took an hour and a half. So now we're in Windows. I don't want a password. As you can see, unlike Windows XP, there are absolutely no drivers. Well, you can't see it just yet, but, well, notice how there's no gradienting on the title bar, how the teal of the desktop looks a wee bit of a lighter shade than it should look. So, while this is doing that, I want to actually try and find the CD that I have with the USB mass storage device driver on it. Oh, and remember to take your driver CDs out of other machines once you've used them. It took me ages to find that disc, and then I realised it could have been in another compact I was working on last night. So I'm not going to go through the entire driver installation with you. It's just basically a case of downloading the drivers, you know, extracting them and actually installing them. But I will do the USB installation driver with you. There we go. And then I'll show you that it should actually, I don't know, work. Okay, so I finally have all the drivers installed. Let's switch this machine on. Now, there is one thing you will notice. One of the drivers, the system enhancements for Windows 98 driver, actually includes something that I really like. This, a Compaq branded Windows 98 screen. I mean, how good is that? Really, I love it. And it's just starting up Windows now. Sorry, that's my main machine also starting. So, it seems that it's still actually installing drivers. So apparently I need to restart. Great. Windows 98 is shutting down. That would explain why it took a bit longer to restart than, to start up than I would have actually anticipated before. Because the, like I said, the IDE drivers were kind of still installing. Let that be a lesson. Restart your computer when it asks you to. Otherwise, when you're making a video, you'll probably be interrupted by a new hardware found wizard. I do like the Compaq branded Windows 98 screen. Compaq. So now it should... Yep. Oh, there we go. And for some reason it thinks that I want Active Desktop running. Since when did I say that was okay? And I like the Active Desktop update, but I don't like to view the desktop as a web page. That is generally just asking for trouble. You know, tied up resources and that for something you really don't need. My former maths teacher taught me that. Back when the Active Desktop first came out, having Active Desktop on takes up memory. I'll never forget that advice, actually. Alright, so here we are. Windows 98 is finally installed. Look at this. We have all the drivers, and you can see we actually have the gradiented toolbars. I actually put in the Compaq OEM branding and the Compaq Stars wallpaper from the 2240 myself, although it was Matt Halstead that originally got me the CPQ Stars wallpaper. So yep, all the drivers are there. Lucent Win modem. ATI Rage LT Pro PCI, English, infrared, and the PCM-CIA, the Texas Instruments PCM-CIA PCI 1211 card bus controller was detected, as you saw in Windows 98 setup, and the ESS device was, the ESS Maestro device was actually detected as well. With wavetable synth, USB flash drive, Intel 82371AB/EB PCI to USB universal host controller, USB mass storage device, and USB root hub. So everything all is here. Intel 82371EB PCI to ISA bridge, EIO mode. Intel 82371EB power management controller. Intel 82443BX Pentium 2 processor to PCI bridge. Wait, Pentium 2? It's... Pretty sure this is a Pentium 3. But yeah, so there you have it. The Compaq Armada M300, and it has actually been all installed. I don't want online services. So there you have it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please feel free to subscribe. And if you like what we do on Facebook, also please feel free to... well, if you like what we do on the channel, please feel free to like us on Facebook as well. The URL for this channel will, of course, follow. And with all that said, thank you for watching this video, and please join me for my next one. See you again.